So today we're learning section 1.1, describing patterns. So let's go over real quick how to set up our notes. All right, so on your blank sheet of paper, you need to title your notes 1.1, describing patterns. You always want to label your notes. Describing patterns. Okay, and then under that, all right, so I'm just kind of showing you on the screen how it needs to look. That's on the first line. And then underneath, you're going to write example 1. Example 1. Okay, now let's go back to the slide. So example 1 goes right underneath our title of our notes, 1.1, describing patterns. Okay, in example 1, it says you're a member of a summer movie club at your local movie theater. The club meets every Wednesday in July to watch a movie. If the first meeting is on July 6th, on what other dates in July will the club meet? Okay, well, there's a couple things here that I can figure out in order to figure out what the pattern is going to be. The first one is that the first meeting is on July 6th. Okay, now there's one little bit of information I need to know. If it meets on every Wednesday, how many days are in a week? 7, right? Okay, so if it meets on July 6th, I could add 7 to figure out the second meeting date. All right, so under example 1, July 6th is the first meeting date. What would be the second meeting date, class? July 13th, very good. And what would be the third meeting date? July 20th. You see how we're starting to follow a pattern? And what would be the fourth meeting date? July 27th. Okay? What about July 34th? There is no such thing. Why? There's no 34 days in, that would be August, right? There's only 31 days in July. So I know that those are the only 4 meetings, at least in July, because there is no such thing as July 34th. Okay? So you see how maybe some logic plays into it too. You have to realize there is no July 34th. All right, so that would be it for example 1. All right, and then this next slide just kind of goes over the answers. All right, now in example 2, this is much more similar to what you would see on a quiz or a test, this format. All right, we see a numerical pattern. It says describe the pattern and then write the next 3 numbers. So the first thing we need to do is we need to figure out what the pattern is here between the numbers. What is the relationship between 2 and 7, 7 and 12, and 12 and 17? It has to be the same. It cannot be, oh, well, you add, well, technically, once you get a little more higher math, or it does change. But in these patterns, it will all be the same. So what pattern, okay, I see a few hands. What pattern do you see here? Let me ask Jared. What do you see?
All numbers are 5 away.
Okay, 5 away from each other, adding or subtracting. Okay, so anytime we describe a pattern, it's going to be a specific operation. So on your notes, okay, underneath example 2, you're going to write description, this word description, and then you'll write add 5. That's how I describe the pattern. I'm adding 5 to each number to get the next number in the series. All right, so if I'm adding 5, 17 plus 5 is?
22.
It is 22. And what would be the next number? 22, then 27, then 32. And those are the next 3 numbers in that series. Okay, and notice how I boxed them because I want you to get in the habit of boxing your answers. Okay, you'll box your answers on your homework assignment as well. All right, so the next numbers in the series are 22, 27, and 32, and the description will be to add 5. Okay, now in example 3, okay, example 3 is very similar to example 2, except now I'm going to have a different type of pattern here, okay? But it's still the same concept. I'm looking at how the numbers progress through this data set. All right, so again, we describe the pattern first. We first have to figure out what the pattern is, then we figure out what the next three numbers are. So how do I get from 2 to 6, from 6 to 18, and from 18 to 54? Before you answer, I'm going to give y'all a few minutes or just a minute or so to think over what you think the pattern would be and what the next three numbers would be. All right, so Leah answered to multiply by 3. So under example 3, so you write example 3 in your notes, and then under example 3 you would write description, the word description, and the description of this pattern would be to multiply by 3. Notice I write out the word, I write out the actual operation. Do not use symbols in your description. Okay, write out the word multiply. Okay, so I know I'm multiplying by 3, so what's the next number in this pattern? So raise your hand and tell me, what's the next number in this pattern? All right, Mr. Jared.
162.
162. What's the next number, class?
486.
486. Very good. And what is the last number?
1458.
1,458. Very good. All right, so I use the pattern, and then I just multiply every number by 3, and that gives me the next number in the pattern. All right, now in example 4, it's a little different because now we're using a visual pattern. So I need you to turn to page 6, and we have a Hawaiian lei example, those necklaces that we get in Hawaii. Okay, and it has some flowers. All right, starts with a yellow carnation, followed by orchids, then a red carnation, then orchids. How do I know when the pattern starts over? How do I know when the pattern starts over? What do you think, Maggie?
When the first yellow carnation comes.
Very good, very good. When you see that yellow carnation occur again in the pattern, that's when you know it's starting over. So based on that, it ends with a red carnation. What do you think is the next flower? It would be the, I heard it, it would be the orchid, right? Because based on what I already see in the picture, the orchid comes after the red carnation, and then what comes after the orchids? The yellow carnation again. So you see how we can use a visual pattern, okay, to predict what would be the next flowers in the pattern, all right? And that the same goes for shapes or any other type of visual pattern that we might see, okay? So I think you have at least one of those on your homework tonight. And if you understand that, that is everything you need to know for 1.1.